Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I take great pleasure in rising on behalf of New Zealand First to speak in the first reading of the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary Bill, sir. And I have to say it's wonderful that we have now had 2 weeks in a row where we have seemingly got full cross-party support with legislation coming through the House. In saying that though, sir, I'm still waiting to hear from the member from ACT because of course we never know where he's going to go on any given day. And in fact, sir, I'm probably quite convinced that he's not sure on any given day how he's going to go. But all that being said, New Zealand First certainly will be supporting this piece of legislation through to Select Committee and hearing submitters' thoughts and feelings on this bill. Sir, I do want to point out some of the areas. I'd like to think that the bill is probably in its current state better served as being called the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary Civ Bill because it has got a number of holes that need to be remedied and rectified in the committee stage, sir. A question that was asked of the Minister last week in the House with regards to the enforcement of this bill. Now, the reality is when we asked what his outcome was going to be, how is he going to actually uphold this fantastic sanctuary? And we said at the current state we've got 3 Orions that are lucky if they fly over once a week. We might be lucky if we've got a frigate that's within the area and a dock worker. His answer, sir, was we've got more than 1 dock worker. And that is some serious concern. It certainly does have some concern when we as a country are hearing time and time again the issue around the lack of policing and the problems that that's causing in our communities. And if we can't police our own country properly because of the lack of funding, then we are going to have some serious problems enforcing an area that is twice the size of our country with more than 1 dock worker, a couple of Orions and a frigate the occasional visit of. All that being said, sir, this is a magnificent area, pristine, that needs to be kept that way. And I think Scott Simpson sums it up quite nicely when he says that most New Zealanders, I would just about suggest 99.999% of New Zealanders, won't ever get to go and see this beautiful sanctuary 1,000 kilometres off the northeast of the country. And that shouldn't be a reason why anybody would want to oppose that, because of course it's looking after our natural environment and trying to keep it as pristine as possible, sir. We note that it is a Category 1 conservation area, sanctuary, which would obviously prevent any fishing, any mining and so on. But there are some contradictions in that, sir, when we move through the bill, when we start looking into it further. People can apply for research purposes into getting an exclusion, an exempt if you like, and some of those things need to be run through the 2 iwi groups to be ratified whether or not they can actually receive that, the ability to go in and do some research in that area. But an area that is of concern, which could be a loophole for people to be able to get around, is with regards to the naval vessels, sir. The area says here, which is Clause 7, disapplies the bill to Crown activities necessary for reasons of national security. I don't know what national security there could be going on at Roau Island, but you never know. As certified by the Minister of Defence, and to ships and aircraft of the New Zealand Defence Force and foreign states. Now, what we could have happening, and we've seen it with whaling ships, where research vessels could be going in there under the name of a naval research vessel, and of course they could do things that we would be unable to stop. So I think we need to look at those as an issue that we need to circumvent. I think the area with regards to how this has come about has happened quite quickly, sir. Well, when I say quickly, it has certainly been worked on for a number of years, and in fact my first few weeks in Parliament I was given a very good briefing by Bronwyn Golder from the Pew Trust, who was very passionate and gave all the right reasons that we should be indeed putting this into a marine sanctuary, sir. But I do have to take a pinch of salt with the government rushing into this. It's almost a little bit of greenwashing's required, and we need to tick the box because we've said in our pre-election promises that we're going to do something here, but yet you negate to talk about and include the EEZ in the rest of your documentation when we talk to a new Marine Protected Areas Act. You promised it was going to be in there, the EEZ was going to be included, and now we understand that that has been completely removed, which is a 180-degree turn, which, to be fair, New Zealanders are getting pretty used to. Government do tend to change their mind quite quickly on things and dish out promises that they can't back up. So that is of concern, sir. The sheer nature of the location of the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary, sir, would indicate that we need to look inshore, inside our tertiary waters, inside that 13-mile radius, to ensure that we actually have some protected areas close to shore that people of this country can go and look and witness and involve themselves in, not too dissimilarly to what Australia have got down the Great Barrier Reef. We want people to enjoy it, we want people to access it, but we want to protect it at the same time. So that is certainly an issue that we need to look at. We are concerned about the lack of mediation or consultation, I should say, with those affected groups in relation to their fisheries being revoked. So no compensation, no consultation, and we're just going to remove that. Now, they say it's only 20,000 tonnes, 20 tonnes, I should say, 20,000 kilograms of fish. It equates to $165,000 worth, give or take. I think, sir, in a true, open and transparent government, we need to ensure that all affected groups actually had that opportunity to submit. So I'm sure we will hear from those submitters in the committee stage, sir, which will be coming up, I would imagine, rather quickly. There are a number of contradictions when we talk about the naval vessels and the seismic testing and so forth. We are, as people, sailors, fishing up there, not fishing up there, sailing up there, going on a trip and putting on a depth sounder. That, under this bill, would be exempt. Now, ironically and contradictorily, the naval ships can use their sonar, which is a hell of a lot more powerful than a little wee sailing ship with a bottom sonar, and that, sir, is a concern and certainly one worth mentioning. When we talk about the setting up of the new statutory conservation board for the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary, sir, I would have to say there is a concern of nepotism and cronyism. Because when we talk about the board that is going to be put together specifically to look after the best interests of the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary, we see there is one nominee from each of the Kermadec iwi authorities, which, by the way, back in 1989 and 1992, they were both granted control over 1/3 of the New Zealand commercial fishing rights. So that is a right to those iwis to be there, to be involved in the discussion. The second one is a nomination from the Minister of the Maori Affairs for the purposes of representing other iwi interest groups. Well, that, sir, is where we are concerned that there could be some nepotism and cronyism coming into play, because if we go down to the third point, when putting this board together, the Minister is allowed to choose 4 members. Now, it's quite clearly stated here. Members appointed by the Minister of Conservation after following a public process calling for nominations and being satisfied as to each person's skills, knowledge and experience that they can be nominated. Now, there's 4 places for that, but nothing like that has been put into the decision made by the Maori Affairs Minister in relation to who they choose and how they choose it. Now, that is a seriously opening up of the door of cronyism and nepotism that I think reeks of undemocratic processes, sir, and we would certainly like that fairness to be spread throughout all decision-making processes, as it has been clearly stated here for the Minister of Conservation to be able to make those decisions, as opposed to the Maori Affairs Minister to be able to basically fingerpink whoever he thinks is going to be best on the day. No, that's probably right too. Mr. Speaker, the exclusive economic zone and the sanctuary that we find ourselves discussing here today is going to be a fantastic area for the future, and certainly a fantastic opportunity for the world to look at New Zealand and seeing the cross-party accord and support for a piece of legislation which has got everybody's heart, mind and the environment's at the heart of their best interests. So, sir, we would certainly look forward to the discussions at the committee stage, listening to some of those submissions, and we have pointed out a number of those holes that we would like to see remedied, particularly around enforcement, particularly around nepotism and cronyism and the likes. Thank you, sir.